Now Sansa2 introduces us to the tourney in honour of Ned, and Sansa's first line in this chapter is that witnessing it is better than the songs. And this is very important as Sansa's entire character, story and symbolism in some way has connections to the ancient histories and lore, the things that would be preserved in song. And so the participants of the tourney and the events here, I believe, may give us insight into the actual histories of what happened during the Dawn Age. Now in participation we have the Seven Kingsguard, Sir Gregor the Mountain, Lord Jon Royce and his sons Andar and Robar, who all wear runic armour, Jason Mallister and his son Patrick, Forrest of Mere the warrior priest, Hedge Knights from the Fingers, Dorne and Highgarden, Bryce Caron of the Marches, Sir Horace and Hobar Redwine, 6 Freys who are assorted sons and grandsons of the Lord Wolder, named Jared, Hosteen, Danwell, Emmon, Theo, Perwyn, and also Martin Rivers, who is one of their bastard sons of the Frey Lord. We also find Jalabar Zoe, who is an exiled prince of the Summer Islands, and also Beric Dondarrion. Now we can see the allegiances of certain houses here, as the Mallisters notably killed 3 of Rhaegar's bannermen on the Trident, and so they are definitely on the side of Robert. And we also see that the Redwines are present, who we noted in the previous chapter sat with the Tyrells outside of Storm's End during the siege, and so they were sided with the Targaryens and would most likely side with a Targaryen restoration. Now the one I find most interesting here is actually Forrest of Mere, as this man is a red priest. He is one of Melisandre's fire wizards, and so it is noted that he once scaled the walls of Pike with a flaming sword, showing us that since at least the Greyjoy Rebellion, the Fire people have been trying to infiltrate Westeros as part of their plans. And we do see that Forrest apparently has never succeeded in converting Robert as was his intended purpose. And so at some point, potentially following the schism around the death of King Robert, they send Melisandre to Stannis as he is the next in line. And I do find it funny how we have an exiled prince of the Summer Isles who is just randomly hanging around in King's Landing, since the Summer Islands are one of the cultures that we saw were part of Illyrio's secret group. It seems likely that he is there as part of some undercover spy network. Now, from what I can tell, the basic logic behind how the tourney seems to work here is that if a participant is knocked out twice, then they are forfeit from the competition. And so we see the progression of our 4 finalists as they head towards the championship. So we see that Jory Cassell, who is representing Winterfell, beats Sir Horace, and then one of the Freys, and then he himself is beaten by Lothar Brune. Lothar then goes on to tie with Aaron Santagar, who is beaten by Jason Mallister, and as far as I can tell, perhaps a tie means that you both lose, because this is a fight between knights after all, so it's all about the honour of winning. And Lothar ends up losing to Robar Royce, and so that would imply to me that Lothar is then removed from the competition. Robar, however, is beaten by Sir Loras Tyrell, and as we see so far, Loras appears to have unseated 3 of the Kingsguard who are participating in this competition. He beats Balon Swan and Sir Meryn and Barristan Selmy. And so we also see that Sir Meryn is beaten by Harwin, who is not even a proper knight for House Stark. So it seems that some of the Kingsguard are very much not actually the best of the best when it comes to protecting their king. And so we see Jaime Lannister also beats Andar Royce, Bryce Caron and Barristan Selmy, and Gregor Clegane also beats one of the Kingsguard, and also Gregor and Sandor Clegane continue to basically beat anyone who is put against them until we are left with Loras, Jaime, Gregor and Sandor as our 4 finalists, which makes me wonder about the other participants, as they are important enough in the story for George to have given them lore now so they must have some form of allegiances and significance. We do see that the weaker of the group, mainly Alan, Harwin, Horace and Lothar, are very much low level. However, we get the other characters that appear to have lasted longer in the tourney, such as the unnamed hedge knight with the checkered colours, Beric Dondarrion and Forrest of Mere, who we know will both go on to be important later in this story, Jason Mallister, and also the Royces, who are an ancient house of the Vale, and I believe have strong connections to the old lore. If you've watched my fairy video on the truth behind the Eyrie, then this will shed some more light on what I believe the original inhabitants of the Vale were. Now, during the course of the battle, we find that the Mountain kills one of his opponents when his lance supposedly veers off. And so we find that this young knight appears to be from the Vale and is in actual fact wearing brand new armour with blue crescent moons, which the blood from his wound turns red as he dies, which I believe is a symbolic representation of the lore here in relation to the bleeding moon mythology that we find scattered throughout this story. And it does turn out, as we find in the next chapter, that this young knight is in actual fact one of Baelish's witnesses that he sent to Ned, and it is strongly implied that Sir Gregor has in actual fact killed this man in order to keep him quiet. Now, Baelish appears to Sansa and immediately recognises that she must be Catelyn's child, and she notes that he has green-grey eyes. However, they don't smile when his mouth does, so even at this young age, she, much like her mother, has picked up that Baelish is not trustworthy and is using false friendliness. After Sir Loras throws a rose to her, Baelish comments on the fact that her mother was his queen of beauty once, and then abruptly walks away. Now, this implies to us that the whole mythology surrounding this event is that a knight gives the flower to his queen of beauty. And interestingly enough, the rose that she gets thrown is red, while everyone else that gets one thrown to them is white, which again leads back to the mythology surrounding the knight's queen figure, who I believe was a redhead who then became white-haired due to the presence of magic, which we see reflected in both Sansa and her mother Catelyn's story throughout the books. The way that Baelish also abruptly walks away is interesting, as it seems as if he has taken pause for a minute and then has thought of something before having to quickly leave. And if I am right in believing that he is being directed by the Children of the Forest in some way, then it would make sense that he has just had some form of revelation surrounding whatever visions or information he has been given, and has switched his attentions towards Sansa. Now, following the day's events, Sansa is with Joffrey and gets drunk while they are participating in the revelries, and we see that Robert, in his drunken state, aims to fight in the tourney, which angers Cersei as she tells him not to, and then she walks away from him with her face like a mask sculpted of snow. And this is yet again another one of those strange instances in this book where Cersei is given the imagery of snow and ice, and also in the past has been given the concept of the others taking her, which makes me believe that there is going to be some form of interesting events involving Cersei and the others at some point. Joffrey instructs the Hound to take Sansa back to her room, and we find that during their conversations it is revealed that the Summer Isles have talking birds which copy their words in order to send messages, which is very similar to what we see with the ravens, and given that they have the talking trees as well, I think this is an interesting little note to add on the culture of the Summer Isles and what could potentially be the lore down there, as they are indeed of the blood of the first men. Now, the Hound mocks Sansa constantly for her perfectly acted out persona as a lady and calls bullshit on it, and so he reveals to her in his drunken state that when he was only 6 or 7 years old, Gregor, who was 11 or 12 at the time and already built like an ox and 6 foot tall, is the reason that he has a burned face. He played with one of his toys and the mountain pressed him into the fire as punishment. And then 4 years later, the Septons anointed Gregor as a knight alongside Rhaegar Targaryen, who did the knighting. So the Hound finds life to be very cruel, very unforgiving, and is trying to tell her that the imaginary fairy tale that she thinks it is not what it is, which is something that she is going to very soon come to realise as the events of this book unfold. And so the Hound escorts her to her chambers, but before he leaves, he gives her one warning and tells her if she ever tells anyone what he has revealed to her, he will kill her.